Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Topic 9, Lesson 1 video. In this video, we will be talking about identifying the quadrants and plotting and labeling points on a coordinate plane. So let's scroll down here and look at this coordinate plane. We're going to talk about it before we do anything with the graphing of the points. A coordinate plane is a plane formed by the intersection of a horizontal axis, commonly referred to as the x-axis, and a vertical axis, commonly referred to as the y-axis. So we have our horizontal axis here in blue, and you can notice over here we have the x, and then we have our vertical axis here in green, and up top we can see that it's been labeled y. And the intersection of these 2 points is a very special place right here in the middle where these points meet. This is called the origin. And the origin essentially is 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. So this is a very important spot here, the orange dot. When we get into the labeling, we will start at the origin every single time. And you'll notice that if you have this vertical axis and this horizontal axis, it cuts the grid up into 4 different parts. And each one of these parts is called a quadrant. Quad meaning 4. So this upper right-hand corner is called quadrant 1. And they do use Roman numerals. So quadrant I, for some of us, is going to be quadrant 1. And quadrant 1 is a very special quadrant because in order to end up in quadrant 1, your ordered pair or the coordinates for your number have to both be positive numbers. If you think about this, starting at the origin and moving to the right, we end up in the positive numbers on the x-axis. And then if we would move up from any of these points on the x-axis, we would be in the positives for the vertical axis as well. So we get a positive number with another positive number if we're going to land in quadrant 1. The quadrants do go counterclockwise. So if we move to the left, we have quadrant 2. And quadrant 2, those ordered pairs, excuse me, the x-coordinate is going to be a negative number, and then the y-coordinate is going to be a positive number. So we are going to have a negative number followed by a positive number if our point is going to be in quadrant 2. If we continue going counterclockwise, down here in the lower left-hand corner, we end up in quadrant 3. And quadrant 3 points, if we start at the origin and we move to the left on the x-axis, you can see that that is going to be a negative number. And then if we have to get left, and then we would have to go down in order to get into quadrant 3. So left is a negative connotation, and down is also a negative connotation. So an ordered pair that is a negative with a negative is going to be in quadrant 3. And then obviously the last one here, the bottom right-hand corner, we have quadrant 4. And in order for us to end up in quadrant 4, we have to move to the right on the x-axis, which is going to put us in positive numbers. And then we would have to move down on the y-axis, and that would be negative. So if you have a positive number and then a negative number as your ordered pair, then you are going to land up in quadrant 4. Let's go ahead and scroll down to the next page, and let's look at graphing some ordered pairs onto the coordinate plane. So you'll notice that I've already highlighted our y-axis in green, our x-axis in blue, and the origin is the orange dot, just like on the front page. So let's jump into this and let's just look at point M right now. Point M is going to be located at 4, comma 8. That is your ordered pair. That is the location of the point. And you'll notice that the 4 is in blue and the 8 is in green. The 4 is the first coordinate of the ordered pair, which is referred to as the x coordinate. So it tells me where I need to go on the x-axis. And the 8 is the y coordinate. It tells me where I need to go on the y-axis. And if I bring those 2 points together, or those 2 lines together, that is where point M is going to go. So I like to be pretty consistent here with my graphing. So the first thing I always like to say to do is I like to start at the origin. I'm going to start at the origin every single time I graph any point. And as I said earlier, the 4 tells me where I need to go on the x-axis. So if I start at the origin, I'm going to go right to 4. So I'm going to say right 4. And then the 8 tells me where I need to go on the y-axis. So that would tell me that I need to go right 4 and then up 8. And that is where I would plot point M. So we'll just kind of draw this here in the red marker here. So if I start at the origin and I go right 1, 2, 3 to where 4 is, please make sure you count carefully. And then from that point, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to plot my point, and then I'm going to label it as M because that is point M. Just some directional movement. The numbers tell me where I need to go directionally. If we look at point A, we can see point A is located at -5 and then 7. So just like I said for point M, I'm always going to start at the origin. Now, the x-coordinate is -5. So if I start at the origin, for me to get to -5 on the x-axis, I need to move left 5. And then the 7 is a positive, so I would go left 5 and then up 7. So we'll plot that with the marker again. So again, I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go left to -5, counting very carefully. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm at -5. And then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to plot my point, make my dot. And then I'm going to label it as point A. And I guess I should have read my own directions. I apologize. So we'll go back over here to point M. Point M is in quadrant 1, right? It is in quadrant 1. Point A, we can see, is going to be in quadrant 2. Let's go ahead and look at point T. Point T is located at -2, -6. So again, anytime I'm graphing a point, I'm going to start at the origin. The -2 tells me that I need to go to -2 on the x-axis. Again, if I'm starting in the origin, to get to -2 on the x-axis, I would need to move left 2. And then the -6 on the y-axis is telling me to go down 6. Again, just take my pen function here, and I'm just going to do exactly what I wrote there. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go left to -2, so 1, 2, and then I'm going to go down 6. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plot my point, and then label it as T. All right, I'm going to skip point H because I want to talk about point R and point L. You'll notice that point R and point L have a 0 for one of their coordinates, and 0 when we talk about graphing, is going to represent no movement. So let's start with point R. Again, every time I graph, I'm going to start at the origin. The first coordinate, or the x coordinate, is 0. So that means no movement left or right. We're only going to go up or down. Again, if that first coordinate is a 0, that is going to be no movement left or right. And then the second coordinate is -10. So that's just going to tell me to go down 10. So if we look at graphing this onto our coordinate plane, I'm going to do exactly what I said in our statement there. I'm going to start at the origin. I am not going to move left or right. I am just going to go down 10 spaces. Again, count very carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to plot my point. And you'll notice that this point is going to be exactly on the y-axis, and that's okay. If we look at point L, it is very similar, but notice that the 0 is in the second coordinate, so that we're not going to have any movement along the y-axis. We're not going to be moving up or down at all. So again, graphing a point, always going to start at the origin. The 6 is in the x coordinate spot, so I'm going to go to the right 6. And then there will be no movement up or down because of the 0. So again, if I go to graph this, I start at the origin. I'm going to go to the right 6, counting my lines very carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do not have any movement up or down, so I'm just going to plot that point right there on the x-axis, and then I'm going to label it as L. If you would go ahead and pause the video, I'd like you to go ahead and try to graph point H and point Z on your own. And then you can unpause the video and I will put the location of point H and point Z on the correct spot. And I'll do it in blue so you can recognize it a little bit easier. Go ahead and try that on your own, please. All right, hopefully for point H, you were able to get the correct movement. And that movement should have been starting at the origin, moving right to 9 on the x-axis, and then going down 3 from that point. So right 9 and then down 3, you can see that is going to be in quadrant 4. And then for point Z, we started at the origin. We went left 6, and then we went up 8, and that is going to be in quadrant 2. I did a bad job here of telling what quadrant we were going to be in after each of these points. I apologize. All right, if you have any questions, please make sure you don't hesitate to ask and clarify. Go ahead and start the practice.